Salutations, respected viewers. The motion before the House today is this House would hold annual elections. So imagine that Madam President has introduced me, and now I shall propose. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, Madam President, we must hold annual elections for the following reasons. It will give greater power to the people. Second of all, it will allow us to correct mistakes swiftly before they get out of hand. Thirdly, because the current term limits are too long. And lastly, because parties will no longer be so partisan if we hold annual elections. So let me go back to the first one. We all talk about democracy. These are probably the only ancient Greek words that everybody knows. Demos, kratos, people, power. And the more frequently people can control their politicians, the greater the power they have. I think it was Jean-Jacques Rousseau who said that in the United Kingdom people only had power once every 7 years or something because there was a septennial act. Elections only had to be held every 7 years. And apart from that, politicians could do whatever they wanted to. Now, there's been a talk of recall elections. The United States has recall elections. That's how Gray Davis was got rid of, and that's a good thing. That would be a step forward. It's certainly in each constituency they could force an election if people are deeply unhappy with their representative. But it's clear that the more often that politicians can be held to account, the greater the power that the public has, and the less frequent, the less power they have. Why, elections every 7 years, that would clearly be too long. Why not elections for life? When the United States became independent, Alexander Hamilton suggested that people be elected and hold their offices for life. And then the public could never provide a verdict on the performance of that politician. If he were dishonest, if he were failing or something like that, he couldn't be got rid of. And so the disaster could go on and on. So that's why the more frequent, the better, within reason. We don't want elections every day, of course. We want to give them a chance to actually do something, to begin on a policy before having an election. We have annual budgets, we should have annual elections. It stands to reason. All right, it would also allow us to correct mistakes. A lot of people are saying about Brexit in the United Kingdom. We're allowed to change our mind. Well, we are allowed to change our mind, electing a new parliament. Now, it's a referendum, so it's not exactly the same thing, but the principle still holds true. It's applicable here. And also, if a disastrous policy is being pursued, the thing is to turn back as soon as possible rather than go on and allow that cataclysm to get bigger and bigger. So people must be able to change their mind. And this happened before, let's say 1974 in the UK, there were 2 elections that year. Republic of Ireland, I think it was 1982, we had 2 elections that same year. Now, the current term limits are too long as it is. In most democratic countries, 4 years, and in some of them 5, and a few of them even 6. We're already moving this direction. Like France had a 7-year presidential term, it's been slimmed down to 5. And there's no reason for term limits, as in the Irish president can serve only twice, American president only twice, French president only twice. Well, especially if elections were annual, no reason they couldn't serve indefinitely, because they could always be chucked out if things were going wrong. And a bit like midterm elections in the United States, although they're biannual. Local council elections happen every year in most countries. Now, admittedly, not every county will have an election every single year, but there will be an election somewhere in the country. So it's like that, but on a national scale, to provide a more immediate verdict on how things are going. And surely that's better. The other side, why not allow elections only once every 20 years or 50 years if you really are against annual elections? So it should be part of the annual cycle. We do things every year. There could be a set time of year where we always do them, and therefore elections couldn't be called at a moment to manipulate the situation to benefit the governing party. Another advantage of this system is parties will no longer be so partisan. They'll think losing an election will no longer be the end of the world. Oh well, because we could come back in a year. And they won't have so much money to spend on elections. Therefore, it won't be an arms race about which parties have got the most money. And that will be a step forward as well. Because now they bet the bank on winning the election. And there's just so all or nothing. And they think we'll be locked out of office for so very long. And this way, it won't necessarily be the case. And so that would be an advance as well. So let me go over once again my reasons for calling for this very necessary measure. Because it would give greater sovereignty to the people rather than investing excessive power in these already overmighty politicians, because it would allow us to put right any errors that politicians have committed before these mistakes really got out of hand. Because the current term limits are patently over long, and lastly, because it would lower the stakes. It would no longer be such a matter of life and death for parties if they won or lost elections, and therefore they would no longer be trying to manipulate the interest rates and things like that and spend more to cut taxes right before elections. You wouldn't be able to do that because we'd have elections annually. And for those reasons, I urge the House to support this motion. Right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm now the opposition. Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, I oppose this terrible motion for many reasons. This proposal would paralyse the government. It would lead to changes which are too frequent. It would waste a huge amount of public money. And lastly, it would mean that our system was over-politicised. I shall go through those again, one by one, in more depth. People would be distracted all the time by elections, and our government would be palsied by the fact either just having to prepare for an election, fight the campaign, or recover afterwards. We would have no normality when they could actually get on with the job. And this is what the public often say: we want politicians to concentrate on actually getting things done and not be always speaking at rallies and sloganising and things like that. And so they always have an eye on their polling rating. So we need politicians to put that out of their mind and just do the right thing. Sometimes pursue policies which are unpopular, but there will be a dividend, but the payoff is several years away. And that's the problem we have at the moment is short-termism, long-termism, which is what we want to aim for. Now, this problem will be exacerbated by this asinine proposal, which is before the House. Now, let's see what the problem with elections which are too frequent. If they're too often, well, let's say in the Republic of Ireland, we had a Fine Gael government, then Fianna Fáil, then Fine Gael, then Fianna Fáil, then Fine Gael, and it would just alternate from year to year. Even worse, we'd have coalitions all the time. They'd be constantly breaking up, and the public would be bored rigid with having to vote all the time. No country does this, and there's a reason for it. It's daft. I know this proposition is not new. The Chartists proposed this in the 1840s. Let's go on to the huge waste of public money that this would entail, introducing this ludicrous annual election law. It would cost parties more. So far from levelling the playing field, it would privilege the wealthier parties even more. The smallest ones wouldn't be able to afford to compete, and they would just fall into abeyance, probably dissolve themselves. So the problem with permanent campaigning is it over-politicised things. Now, there was this irrational argument on the other side. It was preposterous to say it means elections won't matter if we have them every year. You want the elections to matter or not? That's daft. If they don't matter, why would we have them at all? So it would just make things too political, if that makes sense, rather than politicians doing what they're supposed to do, and they would just be fixated with poll ratings even more than they are, rather than willing to do the right thing, to act on principle, to be unpopular because they know it's right for the public, and in the long run the public will appreciate it. So the public are fickle, and we mustn't have them, the politicians, too subject to public caprice. Now, we don't propose the opposite, whether people are elected for life and just rule by fiat after that stage. No, we want the public to hold politicians to account, to judge them, but after a sensible period. Allow them a sufficient space of time, perhaps 5 years, in which to actually accomplish something, and then politicians can present themselves for re-election. Or obviously opposition parties can set out their stall, publish their manifesto and say, we could do a better job, just give us a chance to serve. Election turnout will fall if people have to vote too frequently. It's a proven fact. You could look at the United Kingdom when obviously there are elections to these regional assemblies, local elections, European elections, as well as Westminster elections, and people are bored to distraction by having to vote too frequently, as well as in referenda. So it is a dreadful proposal. It would undermine and enfeeble our democracy. So let me reiterate the reasons why I have set my face like flint against this detestable motion, because it would create a political traffic jam, because it would lead to near constant chaos with changes of government almost every year, because it would squander a staggering sum of the public funds, and because it would lead to a hike in partisanship and incendiary rhetoric with permanent campaigning. And for those reasons, I urge the House to vote down this dreadful motion.